Hey class, hope you're having a really good day. For my first period students, it's been really good to contact some of you and hear your voices and just check in and see how you're doing. And everybody else, if you haven't seen yet, I've posted some Zoom meeting times. If you want to come in and just see everyone's faces, see how everyone's doing, and we might just very briefly talk about the giver, but that's not my main purpose for Zooms this week anyway. So we are on chapter 12. Jonas is our receiver of memory, right? And it is going to be his job to receive all of the memories from the past. That's kind of knowledge of the past, of history that no one else in the community has. So we had Jonas receive his first few memories of snow, of sledding, of sunshine, and of getting like a sunburn. So those are all things that don't exist in their community. And we're going to go ahead and keep reading chapter 12 here. So that is on page 111 if you are with us in this book. Let me remind you that if you, for whatever reason, don't have this book, maybe you weren't there when we checked it out, maybe you can't find it or something like that, I have posted the PDF of the Giver book, just that the pages don't match up, but the book is still the same. The story is still the same, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and read chapter 12 if you would like to follow along with me, okay? You slept soundly, Jonas? His mother asked at the morning meal. No dreams? Remember, every morning they're required to tell their dreams. Jonas, part of his rules is he is not allowed to talk about his dreams at all. Think about why. Jonas simply smiled and nodded, not ready to lie, not willing to tell the truth. I slept very soundly, he said. I wish this one would, his father said, leaning down from his chair to touch Gabriel's waving fist. The basket was on the floor beside him. In its corner, beside Gabriel's head, the stuffed hippo sat staring with its blank eyes. So do I, Mother said, rolling her eyes. He's so fretful at night. Jonas had not heard the new child during the night because, as always, he had slept soundly, but it was not true that he had no dreams. Again and again, as he slept, he had slid down that snow-covered hill, always in the dream. It seemed as if there was a destination, something, he could not grasp what, that lay beyond the place where the thickness of snow brought the sled to a stop. He was left upon wakening with the feeling that he wanted, even somehow needed, to reach that something that waited in the distance. The feeling that it was good, that it was welcoming, that it was significant. But he did not know how to get there. He tried to shed the leftover dream, gathering his schoolwork and preparing for the day. School seemed a little different today. The classes were the same: language and communications, commerce and industry, science and technology, civil procedures and government. But during the breaks for recreation periods and the midday meal, the other new 12s were abuzz with descriptions of their first day of training. All of them talked at once, interrupting each other, hastily making the required apology for interrupting, then forgetting again in the excitement of describing the new experiences. Jonas listened. He was very aware of his own admonition not to discuss his training, but it would have been impossible anyways. There was no way to describe to his friends what he had experienced there in the annex room. How could you describe a sled without describing a hill and snow? And how could you describe a hill and snow to someone who had never felt height or wind or that feathery, magical cold? Even trained for years, as they all had been in precision of language, what words could you use which would give another the experience of sunshine? So it was easy for Jonas to be still and to listen. After school hours, he rode again beside Fiona to the house of the old. I looked for you yesterday, she told him, so we could ride home together. Your bike was still there and I waited for a little while, but it was getting late, so I went on home. I apologize for making you wait, Jonas said. I accept your apology, she replied automatically. I stayed a little longer than I expected, Jonas explained. She pedaled forward silently, and he knew what she expected him to tell her. And he knew that she expected him to tell her why. She expected him to describe his first day of training, but to ask what but to ask would have fallen into the category of rudeness. You've been doing so many volunteer hours with the old, Jonas said, changing the subject. There won't be much that you don't already know. Oh, there's lots to learn, Fiona replied. There's administrative work and the dietary rules and punishment for disobedience. Did you know that they use a discipline wand on the old, the same as for small children? And there's occupational therapy and recreational activities and medications, and they reach the building and break their bikes. I really think I'll like it better than school, Fiona confessed. Me too, Jonas agreed, wheeling his bike into its place. She waited for a second as if, again, she expected him to go on. Then she looked at her watch, waved, and hurried toward the entrance. Jonas stood for a moment beside his bike, startled. It had happened again. The thing that he thought of now as seeing beyond. This time it had been Fiona who had undergone that fleeting, indescribable change. As he looked up and toward her going through the door, it happened. She changed. Actually, Jonas thought, trying to recreate it in his mind, it wasn't Fiona in her entirety. It seemed to be just her hair, and just for that flickering instant. He ran through it in his mind. It was clearly beginning to happen more often. First, the apple a few weeks before. The next time had been the faces in the audience at the auditorium just 2 days ago. Now, today, Fiona's hair. Frowning, Jonas walked toward the annex. I will ask the giver, he decided. The old man looked up, smiling, when Jonas entered the room. He was already seated beside the bed, and he seemed more energetic today, slightly renewed and glad to see Jonas. Welcome, he said. We must get started. You're 1 minute late. I apologize, Jonas began and then stopped, flustered, remembering there were to be no apologies. He removed his tunic and went to the bed. I'm 1 minute late because something happened, he explained, and I'd like to ask you about it if you don't mind. You may ask me anything. Jonas tried to sort it out in his mind so that he could explain it clearly. I think it's what you call seeing beyond, he said. The giver nodded. Describe it, he said. Jonas told him about the experience with the apple, then the moment on the stage when he had looked out and seen the same phenomenon in the faces of the crowd. Then today, just now outside, it happened with my friend Fiona. She herself didn't change exactly, but something about her changed for a second. Her hair looked different, but not in its shape, nor not in its length. I can't quite... Jonas paused, frustrated by his inability to grasp and describe exactly what had occurred. Finally, he simply said, It changed. I don't know how or why. That's why I was 1 minute late, he concluded, and looked questioningly at the giver. To his surprise, the old man asked him a question which seemed unrelated to the seeing beyond. When I gave you the memory yesterday, the first one, the ride on the sled, did you look around? Jonas nodded. Yes, he said, but the snow in the air made it hard to see anything. Did you look at the sled? Jonas thought back. No, I only felt it under me. I dreamed of it last night too, but I don't remember seeing the sled in my dream either, just feeling it. The giver seemed to be thinking. When I was observing you before the selection, I perceived that you probably had the capacity, and what you describe confirms that. It happened somewhat differently to me, the giver told him. When I was just your age, about to become the new receiver, I began to experience it, though it took a different form. With me it was, well, I won't describe that now, you wouldn't understand it yet. But I think I can guess how it's happening with you. Let me just make a little test to confirm my guess. Lie down. Jonas lay on the bed again with his hands at his sides. He felt comfortable here now. He closed his eyes and waited for the familiar feel of the giver's hands on his back. But it didn't come. Instead, the giver instructed him, call back the memory of the ride on the sled, just the beginning of it, where you're at the top of the hill before the slide starts, and this time look down at the sled. Jonas was puzzled. He opened his eyes. Excuse me, he asked politely, but don't you have to give me the memory? It's your memory now. It's not mine to experience any longer. I gave it away. But how can I call it back? Well, you can remember last year or the year that you were 7 or 5, can't you? Of course, it's much the same. Everyone in the community has one generation memories like those. But now you will be able to go back farther. Try, just concentrate. Jonas closed his eyes again. He took a deep breath and sought the sled and the hill and the snow in his consciousness. There they were with no effort. He was again sitting on that whirling wind of snowflakes atop the hill. Jonas grinned with delight and blew his own steamy breath into view. Then, as he had been instructed, he looked down. He saw his own hands, furred again with snow, holding the rope. He saw his legs and moved them aside for a glimpse of the sled beneath. Dumbfounded, he stared at it. This time it was not a fleeting impression. This time the sled had, and continued to have, as he blinked and stared at it again, that same mysterious quality that the apple had had so briefly, and Fiona's hair. The sled did not change, it simply was whatever the thing was. Jonas opened his eyes and was still on the bed. The giver was watching him curiously. Yes, Jonas said slowly. I saw it in the sled. Let me try one more thing. Look over there, to the bookcase. Do you see the very top row of books, the ones behind the table on the top shelf? Jonas sought them with his eyes. He stared at them, and they changed. But the change was fleeting. It slipped away the next instant. It happened, Jonas said. It happened to the book, but it went away again. I'm right then, the giver said. You're beginning to see the color red. The what? The giver sighed. Aha, how to explain this? Once, back in the time of the memories, everything had a shape and size the way things still do, but they also had a quality called color. There were a lot of colors, and one of them was called red. That's the one you are starting to see. Your friend Fiona has red hair, quite distinctive actually. I've noticed it before. When you mentioned Fiona's hair, it was the clue that told me you were probably beginning to see the color red. And the faces of the people, the ones I saw at the ceremony? The giver shook his head. No, flesh isn't red, but it has red tones in it. There was a time, actually, you'll see this in the memories later, when flesh was many different colors. That was before we went to sameness. Today, flesh is all the same, and what you saw was the red ones. Probably when you saw the faces take on color, it wasn't as deep or vibrant as the apple or your friend's hair. The giver chuckled suddenly. We've never completely mastered sameness. I suppose the genetic scientists are still hard at work trying to work the kinks out. Hair like Fiona's must drive them crazy. Jonas listened, trying hard to comprehend. And the sled, he said? It had the same thing, the color red, but it didn't change, giver. It just was. Because it's a memory from the time when color was. It was so, I wish language was more precise. The red was so beautiful. The giver nodded. It is. Do you see it all the time? I see all of them, all the colors. Will I? Of course, when you receive the memories, you have the capacity to see beyond. You'll gain wisdom then along with colors and lots more. Jonas wasn't interested just then in wisdom. It was the colors that fascinated him. Why can't everyone see them? Why did colors disappear? The giver shrugged. Our people made that choice, the choice to go to sameness. Before my time, before the previous time, back and back and back. We relinquished color when we relinquished sunshine and shine and did away for a moment. We gained control of many things, but we had to let go of others. We shouldn't have, Jonas said fiercely. The giver looked startled at the certainty of Jonas's reaction. Then he smiled wryly. You've come very quickly to that conclusion, he said. It took me many years. Maybe your wisdom will come much more quickly than mine. He glanced at the wall clock. Lie back down now. We have so much to do. Giver, Jonas asked as he arranged himself again on the bed, how did it happen to you when you were becoming the receiver? You said that the seeing beyond happened to you They're not the same way. The hands came to his back. Another day, the giver said gently. I'll tell you another day. Now we must work, and I've thought of a way to help you with the concept of color. Close your eyes and be still now. I'm going to give you a memory of a rainbow. Okay, so pretty shocking in this chapter. We know that the community has gotten rid of a lot of things when they moved to what was called sameness. Everything is the same. They got rid of seasons. They got rid of hills. They got rid of all these things that made different countries or areas different. Everything is the same now when they move to sameness. We have now found out that when they moved to sameness, they decided to get rid of colors. So again, this is a fictional book. It's a futuristic society, and we do know that they have scientists, but however they've been able to do it, there are no colors that people can at least perceive or see in the community, okay? We know that there's darker colors and there's lighter, I shouldn't say colors. There's things that would be considered dark or light, but those are not colors, right? Or things that are pale. Keep that in mind about Jonas's eyes. Jonas and the giver both have pale eyes. So if we were thinking of colors, that would most likely be maybe blue or green. But we don't know that. I'm just helping you understand pale and dark, okay? So they've gotten rid of colors. Now I want you to be thinking about why they would have gotten rid of colors in the community. They've also gotten rid of different colors in terms of skin tones. So in our world, people have all different colors of skin, right? We have white people, we have brown people, we have black people, and you have all the different shades and colors. And in our world, at least I hope it's something that people can be, proud of and appreciate those differences, that we all have unique things about ourselves. But it's no secret that in our world, differences in colors of skin, unfortunately, have led to a lot of different prejudices and racism. Earlier on in the year, we had a whole unit, our hero unit, about Malala and Claudette. And part of the stories that we read were people that were being, people were prejudiced against them because the color of their skin. So when we're thinking about this community, when they moved to sameness, and they wanted to create their utopia or perfect world, they made a decision that it would be better if we got rid of colors altogether. So that's just not the colors around us as we look in the world, but it's also human beings. So everyone's skin tone pretty much is the same. We know that for the most part, the hair shades are the same. We know that Fiona's hair, we find out, is red. Jonas is able to see that Fiona's hair is red. And in our world, red hair is pretty rare. And the giver kind of jokes that the scientists that try and mess with the genetics of human beings in the community, that it must drive them crazy that they can't figure out how to get rid of that shade, okay? So keep that in mind, that they got rid of colors, which means all these things that we do in our world where we pick different things based on color. This painting behind me was picked based on the color. These pillows were picked based on the color. We pick different clothing to wear based on color, obviously also on shape and size and things like that. But all of these things that we get to pick that are unique and that we love, we cannot pick those. They would not be able to pick those things. Everything just kind of looks the same. It might look dark or light, but there are no colors. So think like the way that I have always been able to kind of imagine this is like a black and white world, right? If you've ever seen like old black and white movies or anything like that, kind of think a little bit that way. You can still tell that things are darker or lighter and that they have different shades in between, but you cannot see the colors, okay? So that was chapter 12, which means I'm finally caught up for this week. I think the assignment this week is chapters 13 through 16. I'm still going to be reading those this week, and when we get on our Zoom, hopefully we can talk a little bit about it too, okay? All right, guys, hope you're having a great day, and we will hopefully talk soon on our Zoom. Okay, bye.